us as we think aloud, and then give them an option, or not an option, an opportunity to do that thinking work with the partner in all grade levels. But the planning that goes into a K2 book is a bit different from 3-5, and Tabitha is going to talk to you about the 3-5 one. This is a book. It's called Peter's Chair. Who is familiar with this book? Okay. It's written by Ezra Jack Keats. I'm sure that's an author that you've heard of. This is a book that I would read to a first grade classroom if I feel like they are ready for inferring. I could read it to a kindergarten classroom if they are ready for inferring, because that's what I chose to do throughout this book. If you'll look on your planning sheet and find the inferring section, you're going to see prompts for your think alouds, and then right beside it you will see prompts for turn and toss. These are just suggestions. When you get really good at writing your Read Loud with Count Talk book, you probably won't even need this planning sheet anymore. You just need it as a quick guide, and then you can write your own. So I'm going to be focusing on inferring, and I want you to watch as I read and think about what I'm doing and what I'm asking you to do as the listener. So Peter's Chair.
We're going to get you a nonfiction one like this too. It'll be in. We'll send it to you in an email, because this is just for fiction, the piece you have here.
The focus areas are the same though. The reading skill will be the
Right.
same on both sheets, but your prompts would be different for nonfiction a bit. Peter stretched as high as he could. There, his building was finished. We don't have a document camera, do we? Crash. Down it came. Shh, called his mother. You'll have to play more quietly. Remember, we have a new baby in the house. Now, I can tell by the look on Peter's face that he does not like what his mother just said. His mother is saying, "You've got to be quiet. There's a baby in the house." And you know what he's probably thinking? He's probably thinking, I didn't have to be quiet before. Why in the world do I have to be quiet now? Peter looked into his sister Susie's room. His mother was fussing all around the cradle. "That's my cradle," he thought, "and they painted it pink." Peter is just seeing his mother fussing all around that cradle, and he's thinking, "That's my cradle. They painted it pink." Now I can tell from his words and that look on his face that he is upset. He does not like the idea that his mother has painted his cradle pink. "Hi, Peter," said his father. "Would you like to help paint your sister's high chair?" "It's my high chair," whispered Peter. He saw his crib and muttered, "My crib, it's painted pink too." Not far away stood his old chair. "They didn't paint that yet," Peter shouted. He picked it up and ran to his room. Now I can tell that Peter's excited about finding something that hasn't been painted that used to belong to him. And I'm thinking that he's probably thinking, "I better grab that chair before they try to paint it." And he might even try to hide it. "Let's run away, Willie," he said. Peter filled a shopping bag with cookies and dog biscuits. "We'll take my blue chair, my toy crocodile, and the picture of me when I was a baby." Willie got his bone. They went outside and stood in front of his house. "This is a good place," said Peter. He arranged his things very nicely and decided to sit in his chair for a while. Now Peter has just told Willie that they needed to run away. He has all of his things together and he's ready to leave. I want you to talk to your partner about how you think Peter is feeling right now and what he could be thinking. So you're going to tell your partner how he's feeling right now and what he could be thinking. Just talk with the people at your table. He is really mad. He is very upset at this point. And I heard someone say that he was jealous. And at the back, this table was talking about how he's probably thinking he might could get more attention if he ran away. Maybe that's a way to get his parents to notice him. So let's find out what happens. But he couldn't fit in the chair. He was too big. Oh no, Peter tried to sit in this chair, but he realizes he's too big for the chair. I want you to take a good look at this illustration and think about how Peter's feeling now and what he could be thinking. How is Peter feeling now and what could he be thinking? Talk to your table about that. What is he feeling now and what could he be thinking? Okay, turn back. So I heard that Peter at this point might realize that he's being selfish. We talked about that here. And I also heard that he might be thinking, man, I've got to give this to my sister because I'm too big for it. So I'm going to stop here. There's one more turn and talk for you to do in this book, but I'm going to stop here and I want to tell you how it ends if you haven't read it. And you can maybe read this to your class. Now we're going to look at the difference in K2 and 3-5.
Today, boys and girls, we're going to be reading the book Boundless Grace. And as we're reading our book today, I want you to be thinking about the thoughts, the actions, and the words of our main character, Grace, to help you determine her point of view or her perspective. Grace lived with her ma and her nana and a cat called Paw Paw. Next to her family, what Grace liked best was stories. Some she knew, and some she made up. She was particularly interested in ones about fathers because she didn't have one. You do too have a father, her ma would say when she caught Grace talking that way. I must have told you 100 times about how we split up, and your papa went back to Africa. He has another family now, but he's still your father, even though he doesn't live with us anymore. Well, that wasn't Grace's idea of a father. She wanted one like Beauty's, who brought her roses from the Beast Garden in spite of the dangers. Not one she hadn't seen since she was very little, and only knew from letters and photographs. And in her school reading books, Grace saw that all the families had a mother and a father, a boy and a girl, and a dog and a cat. Our family's not right, she told Nana. We need a father and a brother and a dog. Well, said Nana, I'm not sure how Paw Paw would feel about a dog. And what about me? Are there any Nanas in your school books? Grace shook her head. Do I have to go then? Asked Nana. Of course not, Grace said, hugging her. Nana hugged her back. A family with you in it is a real family, she said. Families are what you make of them. When Grace says our family's not right, we need a father and a brother and a dog, she is basing her idea of what a family should be like on the stories she has read. By what Grace says, I'm thinking Grace doesn't realize how fortunate she is to have the kind of family she has. Then one day when Grace got home from school, she saw a letter on the table with a crocodile stamp on it. Grace knew it must be from Papa, but it wasn't. It wasn't Christmas or her birthday. Guess what, Ma said? Your Papa sent the money for 2 tickets to visit him in Africa for your spring vacation. Nana says she'll go with you if you want. What do you say? But Grace was speechless. She had made up so many fathers for herself. She had forgotten what the real one was like. Grace and Nana left for Africa on a very cold, gray day. They arrived in the Gambia in golden sunshine like the hottest summer back home. It had been a long, long trip. Grace barely noticed the strange sights and sounds that greeted her. She was thinking of Papa. I wonder if Papa will still love me, thought Grace. He has other children now. And in stories, it's always the youngest that is the favorite. She held on tightly to Nana. I'm noticing that Grace is still thinking about the stories she has read and basing her ideas about her father on those stories when she wonders if he will still love her now that he has other children. This lets me know that Grace is still not thinking about her own situation, the family that she has. She's still just thinking about the stories. Now, for the sake of time, there is another teacher think aloud. But you probably have already noticed the pattern. In the first two think alouds, what was I doing as a teacher? Modeling. What was I modeling? Anybody?
What was her focus?
You're thinking.
I was modeling my thinking about Grace's, about her thinking, her point of view, her perspective. So my next think aloud that I would model, and I'm not going to read the page, but now I understand why Grace could not manage another word all evening. Again, she is basing her ideas of family on what she has read in stories. I've said that at least 3 times now, right? Basing her idea of family on what she has read in stories. Because of those stories, she thinks that she does not fit in. She still cannot see what she really has. So after my 3 think alouds, we should have a pretty good idea of Grace's perspective about family in general and what hers is lacking. From the outside, looking in, we want to tell her, you have a wonderful family, right? So as the book progresses, then we give the students an opportunity to talk with their partners and respond using the same thinking strategies that we've modeled as a teacher. So the next one says, Grace says, I'm not hungry. It seems like there is more to this part than is on the page. Think about what is really going on now. Turn and tell your partner what you think is going on. So after, and you know, you would have heard the story. Now it's your turn to talk to a partner using the same thinking strategies that were modeled for you. So whenever you're doing a read aloud with accountable talk, you pick a focus and you stick with that focus. You're not all over the place with different focuses because you really want to ingrain in the students the thinking processes and the reading strategies so that they can then apply it.
And then when you are choosing a book, you also want to choose a book that can be used in your mini lesson. So when we start talking about Reader's Workshop, you're going to see a mini lesson part. And you need to think about what books can be read during Read Aloud with Accountable Talk, and then you can pull back out during your mini lesson time so you won't have to take that time to read a different book just to show them a strategy because they're already familiar with this one. Okay, so Read Aloud with Accountable Talk. What it looks like is that everyone is down at a reading area. It could be the carpet area. I know that the older kids, a lot of teachers say, well, they're not comfortable sitting at the carpet. My child just left 4th grade. I had one to leave 5th grade. Neither of them complained about having to go to the carpet to listen to the book. So make it so that all of them are right there together. The purpose for that is so that, did you notice how when you were talking, I walked around? If you are at desk, it takes a lot longer to walk through the desk to listen to the partners talk. But if they're all down at the carpet area with you, you can listen in and then just move on. And you can listen into that partnership, but you could also hear the people around you too and not have to walk around. You can just squat down and listen in.
And students are more engaged when they're on the carpet, and that way you've got a better handle on what's going on in your classroom. If they're spread out like you guys are now, I know that you guys don't want to get on carpet, but if they're spread out like this, it's just harder for you to stay focused on what's going on in the story and with the teacher and with your partner.
Students should have an assigned reading partner. I just told you to talk with the people at your group, but they need an assigned partner that's going to stay with them during Reader's Workshop, Read Loud with Accountable Talk, during partner reading for the lower grades. They need that same person who is on about the same level as them so that they can do that thinking work together. And you will base that off of your assessments. You will know after you assess your kids who needs to be partnered up. And you might have to switch partners depending upon your behavior. You might have kids that only speak Spanish that need to be partnered with someone else who can speak English and Spanish. It just depends on your class. You should see books that have places marked. And like Karen said, you don't have to write everything out on those Post-its. I do. I like having all of my words on Post-its. Some people can just put one or two words up there and go with it. I don't like that. There are two reasons for that. It keeps me on track, but also if someone else wants to borrow my book, they don't have to take the time to plan it. It's already up there for them.
And remember, you're not on your own planning these books. You have a curriculum specialist at every school. And during your planning period or after school, we stay lots of hours after school. Sit down and plan a book with you and show you how to tag it with these sticky notes. That's what we're there for.
And
So
curriculum
come get us.
specialists will even come model
Right.
in your classroom with your students. You get to be the observer, you get to take notes. So not only will they help you write, plan, think about it, they will model.
And I want to let you know that this all started, 4 or 5 years ago. And so even though, as long as I had been in the classroom, Sandy was my curriculum specialist. So when we started this balanced literacy in the classroom, she came and modeled in my classroom. And I wanted her to do that. Have I ever read a book to children before, much like this? Yes. But I still wanted to see her do that with my class, which she did that. And then once I got used to doing it, in about a week or two, or about a week we did it, she would come and watch me because I wanted her to let me know how did I do, what did I need to do to work on, and tell me how I can do it better. So that's what they're there for, and it is they're wonderful resources for that because it helped me to get better in all these little components that they're telling you about today.
And Sandy talked about inferring with her book, and I talked about point of view and perspective because mine was a 3-5 book, and we are getting into point of view and perspective. We're still inferring, just at a different level. But you all, when you read this book to yourself when you're planning, you might come up with a totally different focus based on what your data shows you about your kids and what their needs are and where they are. Some of you have been to SchoolNet or you get ready to go to SchoolNet or whatever, and then any informal assessments that you do. If your children are having trouble identifying point of view or they're having trouble predicting based on what's given to them in the book, their predicting's just wherever and all over the place, use your data, whatever data you have, to help drive what you do in these books. And again, this book could have a million focuses. So,
Because you're not going to just read it one time.
no,
You may later pull it out. As you were reading, I said, that would be a great book for them to have during social issues.
Yes. Yes.
So just to know that it's going to come back.
we call these mentor texts
Right.
because they can help you meet lots of needs in lots of areas of your instruction.
And I want you to think about it like this. If you are with a child and if somebody in 3rd grade, if they were to pick up that book, really without this kind of modeling, all that child would do is read the book and answer some comprehension questions about it. They don't automatically get that deeper thinking that we want them to do. Even at the kindergarten level, they might just have the books with one or two words on a page. We still want them to do that deeper thinking. When we first started this, my little girl was 2. I did it with her, and I was shocked. And when I asked her, based on pictures and what she was listening to me read, I would ask, "So how do you think that character feels?" And she could tell me. She was 2. So if they can do it at 2, they can certainly do it in kindergarten. Don't set your bar low.
Yeah, underestimate your
Yeah,
children.
don't underestimate them. Because you are taking the load off of them. You're reading that text to them. They don't have to decode anything that they don't know. Because you want them to focus on that thinking work so that when they get in 5th grade, that deeper thinking is already there. They've practiced it year after year. But if you never expose them to that, they don't know what it looks like. So use that opportunity
And back to
to
what
model
Sandy was
that.
saying, they're probably not going to think on that level without you leading them there, because typically when stories have been read in certain settings, questions are, like she just said, comprehension. Where did the story take place? Who were the characters? Did
What's the
such and
problem?
such happen before or after such and such? What kind of thinking does that create?
Surface level thinking.
This is where you can start to go beyond that. If you lead them and keep your focus to one, and you do it, and then let them try it.
And you will not be perfect. When we started this, it took me, we caught on after about 1 or 2 books with K2. With 3-5, had Tabitha not been there, and I think I'm speaking for everybody, I did not think like that. I didn't know to think like that when I read a book aloud to kids. I'm sure I did some of that deeper thinking, but not that focused. So it is a learning process. Don't feel like you have to come away with that the first time you plan a book,
And
because
do
you
it as
won't.
a team, because we
Yes.
spent many hours
As a
riding home
team.
from Charlotte, tagging books as a team. There would be 6 or 7 of us, and we'd all be talking about the book and deciding, okay, what should the focus be? Well, what do you think we should talk about here? So don't think you need to do it by yourself either. By all means, work together.
Yes, support is huge.
And work across schools with your Google Drive, sharing those documents back and forth. If you know a 1st grade teacher at another school and she creates one, you create one, you share them, you get a bank of them.
Okay, so you should see students turning and talking. They might be stopping and jotting instead of turning and talking, especially in 2nd grade and up. And they don't have to turn and talk every time. They might just jot their answer down and then share out, or you're looking at what they're writing and you share out. You should see a teacher listening in. Where you see recording partnership conversations, that doesn't mean you have to sit down and jot down notes about that. You are listening, you can record in your mind so that you can share out what you've heard. And if you are walking around and you don't hear anybody that's anywhere close to what you're wanting them to talk about, use that time to guide them in the right direction. And when you you want to coach them as you're listening in. And when you get back to the front, if no one has said what you really want them to say, you can always say, "I heard someone say this," and just you're making it up. But you want them to push them to think that way. You should see teachers ignoring raised hands, and that is hard. But you have to set that routine up, like we talked about in guided reading. Go ahead and say, during this time, we're not doing hands raised, because you know what that causes, don't you? Instead of this lasting 15 minutes, it's lasting 45 minutes, and you keep saying, "I don't have enough time to squeeze everything in." Well, that's why, because you're letting raised hands get in your way. This is a focused time. There might be another time during the day where you just want to pull a book off the shelf and read it to them, and you can talk as long as you want about it. But this is very focused, and you don't have time to answer questions here and there. And you can say, "Is an emergency," and if it's not, keep going. What it sounds like, you should hear the teacher modeling the reading behaviors, and you should hear them doing think alouds and reading the prompts for the students to turn and talk. You should hear students sharing their ideas. You should hear students listening, clarifying, elaborating, building on each other's ideas. It is so wonderful to listen in to a partnership where these kids are thinking in a direction that you didn't think they could, or they were looking at it differently from you. That is so exciting to me. When we first started, I went into a kindergarten classroom to model read aloud, And there was a little girl that said a word that a 4th or 5th grader should have been using. And I asked her what it meant. She knew exactly what it meant. But her teacher would not have known that she knew that word had we not been listening in. So it just gives you many opportunities to see what they can do if you just allow them to do it. And we're not going to go through all that.
But the yes/no questions, you
Yes,
didn't
I
hear
was gonna
any
say
yes/no questions a
Mhm.
while ago whenever they were doing the read aloud. It was all the deeper thinking questions. Nothing was just yes/no.
Before we go on, I'm sorry, did we give out this handout?
I'll go.
This is just a blank planning template, but each curriculum specialist at each school site has it electronically, and this is how you can start building your bank. Also, we have the sticky note template, multi-sticky note template, where you type in the blocks, then you can put your sticky notes on it. Creatively, you can cut them and staple them on the sticky note like this. And then if you need them printed on the sticky note, that is something you would need to check with your curriculum specialist at your school site to see if you have any kind of printer that is capable of that. So don't attempt that on your own.
Unless you
Check
have,
with your-
unless you have an inkjet printer,
Yes.
you cannot run
Yes.
them through the
So
office printers.
do
because it will
not
jam
try to
them
do
up.
that on your own.
We have learned
Seek
from
out your
experience.
curriculum
Learn from
specialist.
experience.
So just, your curriculum specialist will support you in that. If you look at that planning template, you see that it's got think aloud 1, think aloud 2, think aloud 3. Who's doing that? Teacher. Turn and talk 1, turn and talk 2, maybe a turn and talk 3. Who would be doing that? The students. At the end of the book, there is a linger, a reflect, or a buzz. Talk to your curriculum specialist about lingers. Lingers are things you can do the next day. You're probably not going to have time to do it in your session where you're reading aloud. And it's just where you can incorporate some of that writing to learn, some of those CIF strategies that you've heard about over these 3 days. Also, you can take them in a different direction with their thinking than what you did with the focus here. You can do something different, but you might just place this text under the document camera, and in one place she says, I feel like gum stretched out all thin in a bubble. You can put that under the document camera, you can put that phrase under there, and you can say, what does she mean here? What is she really saying? Because I'm going to guarantee you, and we all have our opinions about assessments and testing at the end of the year, but there's going to be a question on there, or more than one question, that says, what did Grace mean when she said? And so that's perfect linger day opportunity. But again, your curriculum specialist will support you. All right, thank you.
You're good. The next component of balanced literacy framework is shared reading, which is another 15 minute, 20 minute piece of your reading block. Okay, and the shared reading, Karen and I are going to kind of tag team this. Close reading of a familiar or relevant text excerpt, and you can use your mentor text that Tabitha just used and Sandy just used. You could take a piece from that and actually use it as part of the shared reading, in which the teacher models and students experience and develop. And we're going to go through this lesson. A few ladies will help us pass this out. This is a K2. We're going to share with you a K2 lesson and a 2-5 lesson. And the reason we say, the reason we say 2-5 is because when they get to the end of 2nd grade, they're moving towards a 3rd grade mindset. So we also have a 2-5 framework. Okay, during this time,
As well, I just want to say that we do have a rotation, like we do 3 weeks of poetry, 3
Yes.
weeks of nonfiction, 3 weeks of fiction, and then we start all over again. So,
and
you'll
that's
have
in
3 different
K5.
pieces of nonfiction, 3 different pieces of fiction and poetry that you'll go through. So it's not,
And the person, there should be a contact at your school, grade level, or your curriculum specialist. We've already planned some of these things for you. I think it's like the first 9 weeks, isn't it, ladies? The first 9 weeks have already been planned for you. 3 weeks of fiction, 3 weeks of nonfiction, 3 weeks of poetry. So we've already pretty much done that for you. And we can get that to you whenever you get to your school to kind of let you read over that. And,
But you don't have to do those pieces.
No, you
They
don't
are
have to
there
do
as
those
examples
pieces.
if you want to
Exactly
use
right.
them, but if you have pieces that you enjoy,
enjoy
that you
it,
like, that you're
love,
excited
that you're
about,
excited
then
about.
use it. That is that is your choice.
If you get to your fiction week and you want to use one of your fiction mentor texts, you can certainly type up an excerpt from that and use that as well.
And remember today, we did fiction for our read alouds, but you need to do just as much nonfiction.
Yes.
Yes. Because we hate to say that word, but on that EOG,
It's there.
it's there. It's just everywhere.
But you want, when you're in the nonfiction unit, that's when you want to do the nonfiction.
Fiction
read aloud.
pieces.
When you're in the fiction
Yes.
unit, you wanna stick with fiction.
And you don't necessarily have to read the whole book in nonfiction either. Sections. Just do a section.
Yeah. Just finished up summer school. We just had a nonfiction piece of text and we just used like 2 or 3 pages in there. And that's all that they read. What does it look like and sound like? And I really wish we had a document camera because it is typically under a document camera. Yeah, Cindy's just like, oh no. It is typically under a document camera. Your students are in front of you. Yes, even your 5th grade students are in front of you because once again, you have that engagement piece where they're down there and they're with you. You have one piece of text and you're using that one piece of text for your 5 day, okay, for your 5-day lesson. Help me out, ladies, have I left anything out? Okay, all right, we have a piece up here and if you'll look in your stack of, things that we just handed out, this K2 lesson, and I'm gonna put my glasses on, and I look like somebody's grandma, but I'm gonna put my glasses on so
We've
I
got to
can
get
see.
this out, Linda. We can't do the template.
Oh, okay, they're coming out the lessons to you, okay. You have a template, and that template can be shared with you electronically so that you can make a copy of it on Google and then type your, piece in. Okay, they're passing out to you the K2 and the 3-5.
And don't go out buying chart paper.
No,
Okay.
please.
Go and ask where is the chart paper. Ask your curriculum specialist because you're gonna use chart paper after chart paper after
Yes,
chart
we have
paper
chart
all the
paper,
time.
We have sticky notes, we have these things coming to us.
You probably won't get
to
these
to
nice
you.
post-it ones.
No, you're probably gonna get some of this.
But there is a stick at, Hobby Lobby where you can get that does the same thing as a sticky note does. That
Yeah.
You can just
It's
wipe
like a-
across it and peel it back off, put it back up. It's like a
Karen-
glue stick, but it's not your regular glue stick.
Karen found that for us.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it takes all of us working together, it takes a village. Okay, the K2 piece, this has already been planned for you, and if you kind of flip through that, you can see that there are 5 days worth of lessons. And then you get to this piece, and it has Alphabet Monster, right, Alphabet Monster. And that's the poem that we're gonna kind of take a quick look at today, but we're not gonna do all 5 days just to save us some time. What we generally like to do, and we had a literacy coach come or actually we went to her and she came to us a couple of times and we kind of worked with her, she's from Union County. And she talked to us about taking the piece of text that you have chosen and looking at your 3rd day plan. So flip back over and look at your 3rd day. On your 3rd day, for K2, it says exploring letters and words. If you can get enough out of your piece of text to do something on the 3rd day, then you've got a good piece of text. Because many a time have we looked at something and we thought, this is not gonna work, and we would shoo that to the side. Because we wanted it to have enough meat to get to that 3rd day. 1st and 2nd day you can do, 4th and 5th, but she said always take a look at your 3rd day first and kind of go from there.
30 minutes
The biggest thing you want
before
to
we end.
understand is fluency is a big part of shared reading. You're going to read this same piece over and over every day for a week. Now, are you going to read, this is short, but you may have something longer. Are you going to read the whole thing every day out loud together?
No.
No. You might just take a chunk. But getting that fluency so that they understand what it means to read with fluency.
And I
And
have
that
been
fluency
in
is going to help
some,
their comprehension.
I've been in some kindergarten and 1st grade classrooms where the girls took the 1st line, the boys took the 2nd line. I mean, so it doesn't matter. Just mix it up ever how you need to, but just to get through this piece.
And we're going to have to do a drive-by.
We are. We're gonna have. We hate that.
So we're not going to,
But
you've got the
we're there to
lesson in
model
front
for
of you.
Yes.
So read that little section on day 3 about what you're going to do with this poem right here. Just let them read it and then we'll talk about it. Because we can't go through it.
Yes, we can.
We don't have enough time. So you understand, it's pretty simple. It's just 15 minutes. You're going to read it for fluency. You've read it the day before. You're going to read it again. You're going to go in and make words.
And that's all you're gonna do.
That's it.
that make sense?
15 minutes.
And then at the end of this, once you've made your words, and, you know, of course, you've got your chart paper, and I
Right here, you can make your words.
quickly make your words, and you're going to just read those words at the end. You might send them back to their seat.
And tomorrow, before you begin again, you might go over those words again. Just reading them with fluency.
When you are writing shared reading plans, and there are plans already made, but those plans were not made with your students in
Right.
mind. You are going to learn in your guided reading groups, in the partnership discussions during Read Aloud with Accountable Talk, anywhere, you're going to learn what your students need. So you might have to tweak some plans, or when you're writing plans, to address those needs. If you have students who just do not get IGH in a word, on the day that you're making words or pulling words or whatever, what are you going to be focusing on? IGH. Your teammates' class may have IGH. They don't have something else. So you can use the same piece, but you've got to tweak your plan to fit the needs of your students. Because if you just go in there and do shared reading day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because this is what it says, and I think I'm going to do those double E words, what if your children don't need that? Then you're just going through the motions. You've got to make it fit the goals that you have for your students for your grade level.
And how are you going to know what they need? When you are doing those reading conferences with them one-on-one, you're taking anecdotal notes about each child. You look back at your notes to see what's the most needed skill.
For your students.
And at the back of this plan, there was like a little planning sheet. So we just kind of looked at day 3 and kind of jotted down some things that we can get from this poem, which is exactly what we did over here for the 3-5 poem as well. We just kind of looked at that and kind of figured it out.
But once again, you're on the carpet with their partners, just like you were in Read Aloud.
And now the children down here do not have a copy of the
It's on the
poem.
document camera.
That's right.
You are
Why?
manipulating it.
Yeah.
You are doing all things with it if it's on a chart. If you're using a piece from Boundless Grace, like I might want to just use a page from Boundless Grace. I may want to have the book, obviously, in color under my document camera, but if I want to manipulate things and circle it, I'm going to need to make a photocopy of that and kind of go back and forth with that so that I can circle things, underline wiki sticks. You can outline things with wiki sticks or whatever. So just choose your pieces,
and
display
charts
them
are
on the
placed around the room,
Yes.
so you'll have your charts up. Because I have seen in kindergarten and first grade, if they were making words, they might go while they're over there at the word banking center and think, oh, I can add that word to the list, and they would go over there and get a marker and add that word to the list. So this is to help your children. It's not about you. It's about them.
And you're worried about decorating your room.
yeah.
Don't be worried about decorating your room because it won't be long before these cover your walls.
Yes.
Okay, so don't
And
think
they're
you got to
relevant
cover up
and
the
meaningful.
walls.
They are. And again, your curriculum specialist will come model all 5 days for you. They'll help you plan. They will come model all 5 days for you. You don't have to take this on by yourself.
Remember, we're sharing this with you so that you can.
Now keep looking at my watch. Am I doing Reader's Workshop?
Yes, the next component is Reader's Workshop, and we just need to understand that Reader's Workshop is a framework. It's a framework for reading instruction, and it includes various components within Reader's Workshop. One being the mini lesson, independent reading, and guided reading. And Tabitha's gonna briefly talk to you about mini lessons. And show the videos.
Yes, that's just enough. Again, this is one small component. 10 minutes. No longer than 20. You're great if you can keep it to 15. 10 is even better. It's direct instruction. It's not a time for raising hands and questioning. You're telling them what you're doing. You're modeling. So you're showing. Then you're going to let them have some turn and talk partner time. You're going to let them try it. And then what you're hoping they will do is use it when they go to their independent reading. So we might not watch this whole clip, but just enough that you can see what it looks like and hear what it sounds like.
Did it play yesterday, Sam?
No,
No,
it's coming through your computer.
it's not loud enough.
Reading Workshop
workshop follows a very predictable structure in our classroom.
We're gonna
It
start by
begins with the students gathered on the carpet
That's not.
for the mini lesson.
Oh,
For the past 2 weeks, you've been doing all kinds of reading. The teacher always links today's lesson to the work students have previously been doing. In your reading log, yesterday, the teacher then named
I'll wait today. I don't know how to do it.
that will be introduced today. Today I'm going to give you another way to respond to your reading. So instead of always telling me or even telling a partner what you're
Right
thinking
there.
while you're reading, you're going to actually talk to your book. After naming the teacher.
Turn the volume up on the thing.
So today I'm going to show you how I did this in the book The Girl Who Hated Books. We started reading. After modeling the strategy for students, now it's time for them to practice. This is called the active engagement. If you were talking back to the book, what would you say to it right now? So turn knee to knee to talk with your reading partner, and partner number 1 is going to start this time. One way students practice is by turning and talking to their reading partner. During other lessons, the active engagement may be more geared toward independent practice. This is also a time when the class may create a chart together, similar to the task being asked of students during independent reading time. Your task for today, during IDR time, is to use your sticky notes to talk back to the book that you're reading. At least once the teachers explain the task for the day, the students head off to read. Right on the back page. Okay, I want you to head off to your book notes and find where you're going to read tonight. A book nook rotation schedule helps students decide where they will read each day. This now begins individualized daily reading, or IDR time. Some students choose special places to read in the classroom, while other students are content to read at their desks. While the majority of the time is spent reading, students do take time to record every book that they read in their reader's notebook. Students keep track of the title, author, color code, genre, date completed, and if the book was easy, just right, or challenging. During this time, students may also be completing a reading task assigned by the teacher. It often includes writing about their reading. Students may also use sticky notes to record the thinking they do as they read. When students finish a book, they place their sticky notes on a sticky note tracker sheet and add it to their reader's notebook. The teacher is also very busy during IDR time. This is her time to lead guided reading groups for students who are reading at their instructional level, or lead strategy lessons for students who need additional assistance for concepts taught during mini lessons. This is also a perfect time for the teacher to carry over work being done during word study. When the teacher is not leading small group instruction, it may be hard to find her in the classroom. This probably means she's conferring with a reader. Conferring gives the teacher an opportunity to check in on a reader's individual progress. She can see if the reader is applying the strategies that have been taught in small group lessons and during whole class mini lessons. Every time the teacher meets with a student in a small group or an individual reading conference, she keeps track of the things she notices about the reader on a label. The labels are then added to a class records binder where each student has a separate page. This makes it nice when doing report cards or when meeting with parents for conferences. At the end of IDR time each day, students fill out an independent reading self-checklist. This is a way for students to monitor their own reading. They keep it in their reader's notebook and turn it in for the teacher to review every Friday. Before the class reconvenes for the closing, students often have time to meet with their reading partners to talk about the work they did during IDR that day. This also provides the teacher with another opportunity to check in with students individually. The closing was the final time that students gather at the end of reading workshop. The teacher will reinforce the teaching point and may have time for students to share their thinking. Before we end today's lesson, I want you to have some time to share that thinking that you did about your book today. The teacher may have a few students share with the whole class, or partners may turn and talk if they didn't already meet prior to the closing. And finally, the teacher links the teaching point to students' future reading work. I want to remind you that as you go off and you read from now on, that you continue talking back to your books.
She sends them off knowing that this strategy or skill can be used today and every time they read.
Great job, readers. I want you to put your book boxes and your readers' notebooks back on the shelf. I hope you enjoyed seeing what Reading Workshop looks like on a typical day in our classroom.
So that was a brief overview of the whole entire Reader's Workshop, but if you think about the mini lesson, her focus was talking back to your book, and I may have missed the part because we were looking for that chord to find the sound. So y'all have to tell, did she model how to do that in her thinking and show it,
No.
talking back to the text? Okay. Let her get this back up and we'll go from there. See if we can find the- Is that the one you just put down?
This is a different one. This is the main.
Okay.
This is the mini lesson.
Okay. Let's just watch a quick little bit of this because it's going to show. We're not going to watch the whole 7 minutes. Screen. Pay close attention to how he presents the lesson.
Reader's Workshop has a format of the day starts with a mini lesson that I teach that helps kids to focus on a certain aspect of reading. Okay. Today, we have been talking so much about character traits and feelings and using more exact words to describe them. And it made me think about how to do that, you have to stay so present with your reading. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that today and how what readers do is they create theories about their characters in the moment when they're present like that. And sometimes those theories change. And to show you that, I want to read this book to you. It's called The Wednesday Surprise. How many of you are already thinking about what it might be like because you read the title? Awesome. I like surprises. But the one Grandma and I are planning for Dad's birthday is the best surprise of all. Because I'm staying present right now, I'm already wondering what that surprise might be. Today, I used the picture book, The Wednesday Surprise. As I'm reading The Wednesday Surprise, or any book, I'm always trying to model for them exactly what I want them to do later. Grandma, I call. Anna! We meet and hug. She tells me how much I've grown since last week. Somebody grow that much in 1 week?
No.
I think the grandmother's joking. Do you think she's joking?
Yeah.
I think so too. And I tell her how much she's grown too. You think the grandmother's grown?
No.
No. So already in my mind, I'm growing a theory. I have a theory that the grandmother and the girl are very close. That they have a really close relationship because they're joking around with each other this way. Along the way, as I do a lot of metacognating out, talking about my thinking as I'm doing it, I sit beside her on the couch and she takes the first picture book from the bag. My theory is growing. I'm wondering if the grandmother is teaching her how to read. And if that's going to be the big surprise for the dad, that she'll read for her father. And so this was a perfect book for me to model for them how it feels like this girl is learning to read and talking to them about my theory about the book as I'm reading it to them, and then allow it to change as the story unfolds and we find out, no, it's not the little girl, it's the grandmother. A pebble for my rock collection. I hold it, imagining I can still feel the desert sun hot inside it. How long?
Okay, so as that video progresses, you would see that he would model it, much like what we do with shared reading, read loud with accountable talk. You allow the students to try it with a different location in a mentor text. with partners, you bring it back, you discuss it with the group. Then you encourage them to do that or any other reading strategy that you have taught when they get to independent reading. All right?
Can I say this? That
Uh-huh.
we have, readers workshop units that have been created for grades K-5 for the entire year, and they're on our district website, and the mini lesson is there for you, already done.
For every day.
For every day.
And we want to clarify that they are written, scripted, but not for you to use as a script, not for you to hold that piece of paper while you are up there presenting, teaching, leading, guiding, facilitating. What those lessons are for, you're to read them ahead of time, and what they show you is just how in-depth you need to go when focusing on that skill or that strategy. Because character change, and I'm probably going to be a little bit more dramatic with this than whatever, but what if you said, did the character change in this book? Your standard was character change. And did the character change in this book? And the boys and girls said yes, and you said yes, they did. And you walked over and did that and put it down. Did you teach the standard? Now, I know you're not going to do that. That lesson is written to help you understand when it talks about character change, what that standard entails. What caused the character to change? What did the character say or do that let you know the character was changing? How did the character change? So it shows you a depth. You're to read it ahead of time. You're to get in your mind. We don't even give specific books for many of them. Some of them we do, some of them we don't. But you get to think about your read alouds that you have already done with your students. It could be a read aloud from 3 weeks ago that you want to show how to do that reading strategy or that reading skill with that book. So the lessons are there, the words you could say were there, but nobody wants to see you holding that paper in your hand. Because to your students, you're going to look like you don't know what you're doing. So it's just there for your knowledge so you can see the depth of that standard and how far you need to go. But they are a great, great resource. And they are written, if you will follow the framework, they are written to do the I do, we do, you do, which just is that's that gradual release, that progression that helps your students become confident in what they're doing. And it helps you to kind of gauge what they need before they go do it independently. Those units are great resources. You can see your curriculum specialist to help you find them, and you'll know that you
Use
met
them.
your standards. You will.
And also on the state reading plan, it mentions depths of knowledge, DOK. When these lessons were written, we had the unpacking standards right beside us. So it's not that they were written and you look at look at it and say, oh my gosh, this is too much to say. Just like Tabitha said, the depth has to be there or you're not really teaching that standard. And you are expected to teach it in depth because that's what's on the state reading plan also.
That first unit you're going to see, though, at every grade level is a launching unit, and that is really important. You're going to look at it and say, I'm not doing some of that stuff. They know how to do that. If you don't set the stage and your expectations and use that launching unit, the rest of them are going to fall.
And you're going to be fighting battles all year long that you could have taken care of in that launching unit. So it is important. It's extremely important for the success that you want to find later in the year.
It'll help you establish routine for your reader's workshop and so forth.
So, yeah, and the mini lesson might be how to use a classroom library as opposed to theories of characters.
If you'll just remember, in all of these components, if you show them without their input, you let them try under your supervision, and then you let them go do it independently. If you will follow that in all of these components, and even outside of literacy, your students are going to be successful.
So after the mini lesson and your kids have gone off, some teachers say off you go. I mean, teachers have different ways of releasing the children to go back to their spots. In K2, well, everybody has independent reading time. In K2, first part of second grade, kids will be sitting around the room with a partner. They will be sitting, Karen, can you be my partner? They will be sitting back to back during independent reading time. This is their independent reading time. In the middle of it, you will hear partner reading, and all they do is turn to read with their partner. You would teach those routines during the launching unit. For 3 through 5, or the second part of second grade, students are at their desk. Or if you need for them to move to tables, some teachers still let them sit on the floor. That's up to you. You can organize that the way you want to. But in K1 especially, kids need to be back to back, and then they turn for their partner reading. So you're going to see that in your launching unit and the other units too. So independent reading is really the heart of Reader's Workshop. This is where, for 2nd through 5th grade, you're going to be pulling guided reading groups. You will be conferring with kids, and you will be able to teach them on their level. We talked about that in the K2 guided reading session. So during that time, during your independent reading time, that's when you're going to really be able to teach the kids on their level, whether it be one-on-one when you're conferring or during guided reading. For kindergarten and 1st grade, your independent reading time remains independent reading because their stamina has not been built up enough to even have time to pull a guided reading group yet. So you would do independent reading, and everyone's reading, and the teacher, and if you have an assistant, will be conferring pretty much the whole time. Later on in the year, if you have enough time where your assistant can pull a guided reading group, or you can squeeze in a guided reading group after you confer with 5 or 6 kids a day, then you can do that. That won't be wrong.
Who in here is K3? And in class?
Right.
Has anybody talked to you about in class?
We talked about it.
Did you?
We did in
So
guided reading.
this is okay, you've already told them that. This independent reading time and the guided reading groups and the conferring, a wonderful opportunity to take care of your progress monitoring in an authentic setting. While they are doing what you've asked them to do, that's when you can assess what you need to for progress monitoring, rather than it being, today's progress monitoring day, all right, line up, I need you to, you can make this feel like it's just part of their day and what they've been asked to do, and they don't even really know what you're doing when you're progress monitoring. All right.
And you can progress monitor with 4th and 5th grade.
You
Yes.
just do a
By hand.
record by
Yep.
hand.
So the last component,
Wait just a
Yes.
minute.
Oh, I'm
Let's talk.
sorry.
It's all right. We are not going to watch a video on
Okay.
this.
We're gonna move right on.
Yes.
We're gonna move past this. All right.
Okay, so you're moving on.
the next component is guided reading, and I know that K2 teachers have already received some in-depth guided reading training this morning, but I do want us to talk a little bit about what guided reading is and understand too that this can be for 3-5 and it needs to be for 3-5, and I've really been pushing my 6-8 teachers to
Yes.
do more guided
Yes.
reading.
Exactly.
Yes.
And when I say guided reading, I'm talking about small group instruction on level text that is similar, well, very close to within the group. And when we say a group, it may be 5 or 6 students, but it's instructional because it is on their level, okay? And especially at the elementary level, you're gonna find that you have this type of gap within your classroom. When we say you have a beginning reader and you have a well above level reader in the same classroom, how do you address the needs of both, those students? And the way to do that is guided reading. And at my school, it was a requirement. So this is an expectation of our district. This is part of balanced literacy. And when we say balanced literacy, we're talking about a balance, making sure that you are meeting the needs of all of these instructional needs of all of your students. So let's just watch a little snippet of a guided reading lesson.
This is 3rd grade level L.
Level L, 3rd grade.
Dig deeper with is how are you feeling so that we can figure out and make an inference of what kind of character are you has, what type of person is she, and so you're going to read to find out about that. So go ahead and take a look inside. As you're looking in there, I want you to make a prediction.
It seems like they all get looking.
They're all looking at me. All right, is there anything else that you She is dancing a lot. Did you notice that too? So, just to give you an idea, to be careful, when we go into the book, there are some interesting words that I wanted to introduce to you. So, does anybody know this word already? What is it? Village. And a village is, can you tell us what a village is? It's kind of like a little city, but it's usually not like really big buildings, it's just little shacks, and usually they have dirt roads, and a village can kind of be out in the middle of nowhere. So it's where a bunch of people live together in a village. And then we have this other word, debt. Now, if I say debt, have you ever heard that word before? No, I'm saying no. Debt, there's two different ways that we can use it. A deck, maybe at the back of your house, you have like a porch that's built out of wood. That can be called a deck. But in this story, it means something different. My picture here that I have to help us, can you tell what that looks like? Not really. Yes, it's a crown. So when you get decked out, if I say, I put on a crown and I got all decked out, what do you think that means? I put the crown on to get decked. So you're getting all dressed up.
So the handouts that we just gave, the 3-5 people and the K2 people got them earlier. One of them, those are lesson plan templates that are stapled together. You can get electronic copies of those from your curriculum specialist. You do different things with different levels of text, so there's a different template for each of the text bands that your curriculum specialist will talk to you about. But that on the left side just gives you an idea of what you should be doing as far as a flow of a lesson. And then on the right side is where you can actually type in what you want to do with the book that you choose. The other handout, Sandy, if you'll talk to them about that one, the A, level A.
The other handout, which is the thicker one, goes through the characteristics of text at that level and then the characteristic of a reader who is at that level. So that will help you when you're planning your lessons or even when you're reading with the kids one-on-one. If you know that a kid is at level D, you should expect to see these things in their text, and you know that they are at this point with their reading. So you can read up to level D on the characteristics and know that they should be doing all those things. If they are not, then that's your teaching point for them when you're conferring with them.
And again, I've said this a lot, curriculum specialists will go in and model guided reading groups for you. You are not going to start out doing every single component probably and having awful reading groups. Do not expect that of yourself. You've got to work your way into that. You've got to teach your students the routines, and the launching unit sets all of that up for you. So it's not like you go in day one and you're going to do every single thing that you saw up here in the way that it has happened. And this is such a brief overview. This is just really not even the tip. I mean, it's just a small piece. But we just wanted you to have an awareness when you hear shared reading. Oh, that's a component of balanced literacy. When you hear mini lesson, oh, that's when we're just focusing on a reading strategy or skill and we're modeling. You know, we wanted you to have some reference points when you start to get into your building and you're working with your curriculum specialist. Utilize the curriculum specialist. That literacy, we started out as K-5 lead literacy teachers, and that's all we focused on for 2 years, and that is a passion of ours. So our role has expanded, but we still have literacy at our heart, and we love to model, we love to plan, we love to do these things in your classroom. So please utilize us for support. And just know that you can't expect it to be perfect from the beginning nor at the end. It's going to be what you make it, and just be proud of the small steps that you take each time you add a part on.
I need to say one thing about guided reading. The K2 people heard this, but guided reading is not taking a novel where every kid in the class has, and you're reading that whole group, and then you pull your group and they bring that novel to the guided reading center. That is not what it is. Know that the books you choose from your leveled library need to be based on the needs of those kids. So in K3, you are going to use your in-class data to help you decide. And 4th and 5th grade there will be a tool in place for you to help you see what level they're on before you start pulling guided reading groups. And I also told K2 people this: you're not going to start guided reading in the first week because you don't know what level your kids are on. You're going to need time to gather all of that data to help you decide how to group your kids. If you'll look at that sheet where it has the lesson plan template and it says A through D on the first one, then E, F, G through I, and then J plus, those are your bands of text. So if you have a kid that is a level A and a C and a D, you can group those kids together to create a guided reading group. You're not going to have everybody on a level H. More than likely you won't. So you can band those kids together based on those lesson plan templates. And it also is not round robin reading.
Oh, no. Did everybody get this?
I don't think we
No,
passed
no
it.
one got that. We didn't have that. It's not round robin reading.
You know what we mean by round robin reading? Okay, I need you to read.
Mhm.
I need you to read. Now y'all point while she's reading. All right, now you read. Make sure you point while she's reading. No. Guided reading, you want students to have the opportunity to manage text on their own. And I don't mean independently, but everybody managing text. We have things like whisper reading, staggered reading. Your curriculum specialist can share that with you. But whenever you're doing that familiar read at the beginning of guided reading, you might say, okay, everybody start reading, whisper read, and you'll start listening in to her, but they're still reading too. And so that they don't get on the same reading pattern, you can say, now you start reading when I tap you in. So you tap and she starts reading, you let her get a page, and I'm not talking, you know. Then you tap this one to start reading so that she started reading in a different place, and you tap this one and you go back and start listening to her. Everybody's working to read. The same thing happens when it's time to do the text reading of the new text. Everybody's working to read. So what if they're getting some words wrong? So what if they're not using the right reading strategies? That's why you're listening in and you're doing some private little coaching. Then when you come back, you're going to have a strategy lesson and you're going to say, today, guess what I saw good readers do in this group? You're going to compliment them on something, and then you're going to say, and also what I noticed that we do as readers is when we get to a word that has an ending, we need to make sure we read all the way through the word. So do you see, if they're making mistakes, you can attend to it while you're listening and in on one of them reading, but you also can address it during the strategy time. That's just part of the flow of the lesson, and you will see that, and it can be modeled for you. But you do not want it to be round robin reading, because if one person's reading, the other people are not having to manage the text. And what do they have to do when they get independent reading? Manage the text.
And please make yourself familiar with your level library as
Yes.
soon as you're able to get into your school, because all of our schools now have level libraries.
Wonderful
and they
resource.
Are wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful.
Great
So,
books.
Great.
I'm gonna call them name brand books.
Yeah.
Books you are familiar with. Good titles. Good
Yeah, if you want
authors.
some really good videos to watch, like when we started there, Clemson University, if you'll just Google that and go to their reading recovery, I think it is, video after video, just really good stuff if you really want to see how it's modeled before you get in there yourself.
I think that we have until about 11:30 if we need it. You all have devices. Well, first of all, do you have questions? I mean, I know this is a lot. You might not even know what question you need to ask at this point. I always like to hear something the first time, and then I like to hear it again because then I have a reference point. So just let this be your first time hearing it. The next time you'll be, oh, I did hear her say that. Anybody have any questions at this point? If you've got a device or a neighbor has a device, let's go to the Duplin County website and let's show you where those Reader's Workshop units are.
Now they can't get into it. They have to be signed in to get into it.
Can't they sign in?
They don't have to. They are. Yeah,
Well,
they don't
if
all
you've got
have you.
sign-in rights.
At least we can model
At least we
it for
can
them.
show you here where they are. And y'all, if you want to print them, that's great. I think they're recommending trying to print to a copier at your school instead of a printer, because it's cheaper to print to the copier through network. People at your school can help you with
You got
that
sign-in.
instead of printing to a printer. But if it were me doing this, I would want them printed, hole punched, and put in a binder. Unit 1, launching. Unit 2, characters, something, whatever the names of, they're all different names for different grade levels. So do you see how she's signing in up here?
She thinks she has, it's been a while.
Oh, I can
She
sign
wants me
it.
to sign in.
I can sign. Thank you.
I don't know if you have to do it the whole evening, I think it's just take care of it.
No, they,
Have all of y'all signed into this?
No.
It is gonna be your, it should be your first initial of your first name, and then your last name. And then, do they have to type in at different schools like that?
No.
Okay, then the next one will be change me, is what you're gonna type in. And then what you'll do later is you will change it later, but for right now, just use change me. Everybody try that just to see.
So once you get in,
If your name
That's-
happens to
that
be
she
one,
went-
you have to use the first two initial, or first two letters, then use that in this as well.
And while we're waiting on some people to sign in, if you all, did anybody talk to you on K2 about the state reading plan?
we mentioned it.
When you pull up the state reading plan, when you Google Read to Achieve, North Carolina State Reading Plan, lots of pages in that document, but you can get to a page where it talks about suggested actions for literacy, like 41, 42, whatever. It will tell you by grade level band expectations for literacy instruction. You are going to be able to read about in more depth everything that we've talked about today. We have said balanced literacy. The state reading plan does not call it balanced literacy, but that's exactly what it is. And it is a wonderful, wonderful resource or guide for you to use. And at your schools, your curriculum specialists will be working with you, looking at that document specifically to show you why we do what we do with literacy instruction.
Are we ready?
Yes.
All right,
Okay.
so on the tabs at the top where it says home, our district, departments, you wanna click on departments. And then it should open up, you should see K-8 curriculum on the left.
Yeah, you gotta click on curriculum